Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hot Girls and Hockey podcast. My name is Sarah. If you're new here, this is the show where we talk about all things hockey, the what to knows, the who to knows, and everything in between. And today's episode is going to be a fun one because I'm talking about the entire concept as well as some examples of a little thing that the normal everyday just kind of, they know who Sid Crosby and McDavid and Gretzky are. A hockey fan wouldn't quite know about, whether that's just they don't know about it entirely or they have heard of this concept and this position, I guess, so to speak, but they don't really know anything about it in detail, which is EBUGs. I want you to picture yourself and you're at a hockey game. How would you feel knowing that somewhere in the stands of that arena there's a man and he's waiting? And that sounds so fucking creepy. He's just sitting and waiting, and he's watching the game, but he's also waiting to be told whether or not he'll get to suit up for either the home team or the away team. That is what an EBUG is. So EBUG, EBUG, stands for Emergency Backup Goalie. Every single team in the NHL has a list of active EBUGs for their arena. And I'm going to talk about kind of what exactly their presence means, and give examples of EBUGs who have actually played in regular season NHL games. Before we get into all that, just do a little housekeeping. I turned 28. Yes. Oh my gosh. Love. Don't know how I feel about being close to 30, but I'm not trying to think about that. I'm trying to think about the fact that I survived another year of life. I'm not gonna lie, being 27, 27 was kind of the worst year of my life, but we're not gonna talk about that. We're just gonna talk about the fact that I'm happy that point of my life is over, and I'm embracing this new era of being 28 and seeing what exactly happens, and what it entails. Thanks for everyone who wished me a happy birthday for that too. Also, I don't think there's really anything going on in the hockey world right now. We're just kind of finishing up the January games, and then we have like a week of games in February until there's a 2-week Olympic break, which is very exciting. I am going to be producing some content for that with some people that we may know and love, so be on the lookout for that. Also, just want to preface for the audio, well, I guess, and also video listeners of this episode, if you hear anything in the background, my boyfriend's playing video games and I don't want to make him stop while I'm filming, so just ignore and focus on what we're talking about. Got it? Good. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. I do not have the Sharks Cup today. I do have a non-alcoholic, it's like an Italian soda, and it's like mojito flavored, which is super yummy. So yeah, grab a snack, grab a little drink, and let's just get into it. Cheers. So my not really like actual definition, but just my explanation of what an EBUG is. What is an EBUG? Essentially, they are non-professional goalies that are local to the arena for the team closest to them. That in case one or both goalies for either NHL team, whether that's the home or the away, cannot play, they will sign a one-day contract, a professional or an amateur tryout contract, whatever it is, and they will suit up for the game, and they will either just sit on the bench for the entirety of the game and not have any gameplay, or in very rare cases, they will actually go in net and play in an NHL game, regular season, preseason, whatever they need them for. All right. And every arena that hosts an NHL team must maintain and keep a list of EBUGs in case a situation happens when they are needed. And they always have to have at least one EBUG in the stands at every home game, in case of a situation where they are needed. So they attend whether or not they actually do suit up. Usually they're given kind of a heads up ahead of time if they potentially might have to, but either way, they have to have at least, they, as in like the home team, have to have at least one at their arena for every single home game. So now that begs the question, does an EBUG have to play for the team that they are an EBUG for? So if you're an EBUG for the Edmonton Oilers, if your presence is needed to suit up and be on the bench or be on the ice, does it have to be for the Oilers since that's who you're an EBUG for? No, you can be an EBUG for either one of the teams that needs it. The whole essence of having EBUGs is in the case of, I'll use the most recent example I can think of, which is like the season happening right now. Essentially, what happened was Askarov, our main goalie, got sick, and so starting that game was Nedeljkovic, and he is our backup goalie for the Sharks. And so we didn't have time to, fly up one of the guys from the Barracudas, which is our minor league team. We didn't have time to fly out one of our goalies from there. So Nedeljkovic went and he played starting for the game. And so the EBUG for the Philadelphia Flyers or Penguins, I'm pretty sure it was for the Flyers. He, as in their EBUG, he suited up for the Sharks, and he didn't play, but he suited up, and he made headlines because he's like an archaeologist or like I don't know, he's some kind of like scientist, I think, in his like day-to-day life. He got to suit up for this NHL game. So that's the most recent example that I can think of, as someone who, he didn't suit up for the Flyers or whatever team it was, even though he's an EBUG for them. He suited up for the Sharks because that's who needed an EBUG for the game. So got it. They don't have to play for the team that they're an EBUG for. They can play for either or. Now that begs the question, are EBUGs commonly used, as in do they always suit up or play a game? And the answer to that is no. Most of the time, the guys, like I said, will just sit in the stand and watch the game. And they'll do this without ever suiting up for a game or even going into the net. Because it is even more rare for an EBUG to get any playing time in an NHL game. It's already rare for them to have to suit up, even more so getting to play. So what would qualify someone to be an EBUG? So there's not a ton of qualifications. There's a few. There's at least 4 that I'm going to mention right now. One, that they should have at least some playing experience at any level. Most of them, they've played in college, or they played in some kind of minor league, or even high school. They should have just at least some playing experience. 2, they cannot be a paid employee for the team, which I'll get to why some of this doesn't really make sense, but that's just one of the ones on all the research I did, saying that they cannot be a paid employee for the team in order to be an EBUG. Number 3, they can not be under any kind of professional services contract. So if they're under contract with another league's team or another league in general, they cannot be one, because they have to sign a contract for the game if ever they have to get pulled to be suited up, whether they actually play or not. They can't be tied to another contract into another league, essentially. And number 4, and kind of the most obvious, they have to reside local to the arena in order to attend the games and be able to go to all of them, in the case that they're needed or even not needed. So those are just kind of the basic qualifiers in order to become an EBUG. And every arena, like I said, has a list of EBUGs. Sometimes they'll use the same one, sometimes they'll rotate them out. It just kind of depends. Some other things to keep in note is that they do get paid for their time watching the games in the stands. So they're essentially getting paid to watch the games. And if they are called to suit up or play, then they do get to keep their game jersey or their game sweater that they use in, the case that they actually do get to suit up. So now that brings us to the question, how many EBUGs have ever played in an NHL game? So only 6 instances have ever been recorded of EBUGs playing in a regular season game. So we're going to go through all 6 of them. I'm not going to go into complete, absolute every detail about what happened during the game. What I'm going to do is go over their names, their experience with hockey, like in general, what they're doing like before / during like their time being EBUG, and then what actually happened when they got called up to play and start like suit up and play. So we'll go through the 6 that have actually played in an NHL game. There have been more that have just suited up to sit on the bench, which you can look at the lists of those. But I wanted to focus for my examples on people who actually got to, play in an NHL game. So let's get into the first one on my list. So the first one I have is Jorge Alves. He played for teams in the ECHL and the SPHL. And this is what I mean by like the whole thing of like they can't be a paid team employee, because he was the equipment manager for the Carolina Hurricanes at the time that he was called up to be an EBUG, which like I don't know what they would classify being a paid team employee would mean, but I feel like being an equipment manager would qualify you in that category. I don't know, whatever. This happened 10 years ago, so it's too late for these semantics now. But either way, so yeah, he was the equipment manager for the Carolina Hurricanes at the time. And then on December 31st of 2016, in a game against Tampa, he was signed to a PTO contract, which is a professional tryout contract, in order to suit up and sit on the bench as a backup goalie for the Hurricanes, in place of the team's actual backup goalie, Eddie Lack, who he was out with a concussion. So their starting goalie was still, up and ready to go, but they need to always have a backup. So then he signed the PTO contract to be the backup and kind of warm up the bench. And what was really cool about this is that even though he was like suited up in all of his goalie gear and he was on the bench, he was still also actively doing his role as equipment manager. Like he was sharpening blades, he was replacing blades on the skates, he was taping sticks. He was like, oh, well, I'm sitting on the bench anyway. I might as well just do what I normally do every game, just in goalie pads and like a cap. And then the last few seconds of the game, so last few seconds of the third period, with the Canes losing 3-1, they pulled their starting goalie Cam Ward and then put in Alves. And he technically only played for like 7 seconds of the game, like the third period, with no shots on goal. So he didn't have any saves because no shots were made at him. But he became one of the oldest players to make their NHL debut at the age 37. Now, my next example is a man named Scott Foster. So he played in the WHL and at Western Michigan University. He was an accountant who signed up to be an EBUG for the Chicago Blackhawks. And then on March 29th, 2018, he was signed to an amateur tryout contract to serve as an EBUG for the Blackhawks in a game against the Winnipeg Jets. So the deal was at this point in time that the main starting goalie for Chicago, he was out on injury, and then his backup became a temporary starter. But before this game, he got injured. But Chicago had enough time to call up this guy named Colin Delia from their minor league team to come and act as starter for this game. So it would be his NHL debut, and he would act as the starting goalie, but he wouldn't have a backup. And so that's where Foster came in. So he came in to be the backup for the backup's backup. It's like a Russian nesting doll, I swear to fucking God. But that's his situation. That's what it was. So he's suited up and he's on the fucking bench. And so then this Colin Delia kid, he is making his NHL debut. However, he did end up getting injured in the middle of the third period of the game. So now Foster would go and get into the net in place of him. And the thing with this guy is like he's had in his head, I guess, that he never even expected to have to suit up for any of the games being an EBUG, let alone getting to play. So he was pretty stoked about that. And he saved all 7 shots that were, shot at him. And Chicago did end up winning 6-2. Next one would be a man named David Ayres. It's Ayres. I'm going to say Ayres. If I'm wrong, sorry. But David Ayres, so he played in youth hockey leagues while growing up in Canada. He also played in the Allen Cup Hockey League and then the AHL. He was actually the backup goalie for the Toronto Marlies and the Charlotte Checkers. And then he actually also worked at the home arena for the Marlies, doing various maintenance duties, including operating the Zamboni on the ice, which gave him the kind of moniker when he, got his like ice time or whatever in his game. The whole thing of like, a Zamboni driver, suited up for the game. So it's because he did maintenance stuff for the Toronto Marlies. And I guess technically, yeah, he was a Zamboni driver, but he wasn't like the main Zamboni guy. He would just do it like sometimes. But he, on February 22nd of 2020, during a home game for the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Carolina Hurricanes, was signed to a 1-game NHL contract to suit up and play as goalie for the Carolina Hurricanes after both their starter goalie and their backup both got injured. He entered a little over halfway into the second period when Carolina was winning against Toronto 3-1. He did let in 2 shots, but he would block 8 shots on goals, and Carolina would end up winning 6-3. Next one on my list is a man named Thomas Hodges. He was born in England, but then he grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas, and he played with both youth hockey leagues and he also played club hockey with his university, and later he would become a goalie coach for the ECHL team, the Allen Americans. And then on April 29th, 2022, in a home game for the Dallas Stars against Anaheim Ducks, both of the Ducks goalies got injured and they couldn't continue in the game. So Hodges, being an EBUG for the Dallas Stars, he was then signed on a 1-game NHL contract to go suit up and go into the net for the Ducks for the remainder of the game. He entered during the third period with only like 54 seconds left on the clock. The game at the time was tied 2-2, and he would save 2 out of the 3 shots that were hit at him, but he did then also let in a shot by, I love him so much, Jason Robertson, which essentially cinched the win for Dallas. They won 4-2, but it was still a fun kind of experience for him because when I was reading my the excerpts about him, he got injured pretty bad. He got hit in the head with a puck or something, which made it so he couldn't actually pursue a career in the NHL. So this is kind of the closest that you could get. So that was very cool. And now we're down to our final 2. So the next one, Matt Berlin. He was drafted actually by the WHL before moving to the AJHL, and he also played for the University of Alberta in Canada. He was an EBUG for the Oilers, and he had actually suited up on the prior season to the one that he, actually got, some gameplay in. He was actually suited up for the Colorado Avalanche in a game where it was a home game for the Oilers, but they're playing against Colorado. He ended up suiting up for Colorado, but he didn't actually get any game time. It would not be until January 28th of 2023 that he would actually suit up and go in the net. So the Oilers' regular goalie was sick in this game against the Chicago Blackhawks. So Berlin was serving as a backup to the Oilers' regular backup, being signed to an amateur tryout contract for this game. And then he did only play for 2 minutes in the third period, but he would save the one and only shot that was made at him, and the Oilers would go on to win that game 7-3. And then also, just like Berlin, the next guy, Jet Alexander, kind of had a similar EBUG experience to him. So Jet Alexander, played in the OJHL and the CJHL, as well as at the University of Toronto, and he was an EBUG for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And like Berlin, he had also suited up before as an EBUG, again, also for Colorado, but he did not get any gameplay in that situation. He would get some on April 8th of 2023 when he would be signed to an amateur tryout contract with the Toronto Maple Leafs in a home game against the Montreal Canadiens. He entered in with only a minute left in the third period, and he didn't have any shots on goal, any shots made at him, but Toronto was already way ahead, and Toronto ended up winning 7-1. So yeah, those were all 6 of EBUGs that actually got to play in a regular season NHL game. Like I mentioned before, there have been more EBUGs that have actually suited up and just sat on the bench than there are ones who got any playing time. So you can go and you can look up those lists and those names as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. And before I go, I did just want to say thank you for the feedback on my question on whether schedule change would be something that you guys would be open to. So I do want to say that I am going to change it to every other Thursday, but I am going to, in the weeks that no regular episode gets put up, do TikTok or Instagram reel, or also I might also post a YouTube short. It's gonna be all the same video. I'll just post it on all 3 different platforms of just a weekly recap on what's going on in hockey. Just so I'm not completely ghosting you every other week. But yeah, so this episode will come out, and then next week there'll be no episode, but the week after that there will be one. So yeah, it'll be every other week. This just works better with where I'm at in the schedule for my job, and I think it'll be okay and fine. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It does help out a lot. If you are listening to this on Spotify, please make sure to give the show a good rating. You can follow the show's TikTok page at HGLHpod or the show's Instagram page at Hot Girls Learn Hockey. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.